Carrie was too big for this to happen to her.
On the 21st of August, 2024, a regular day in Fayette County turned into a horrific scene that no one could have anticipated. A brave father called to report his son, who had earlier confessed that he killed his wife Carrie Harden in self-defense after an intense argument. Rather than protect the child he had raised, his father did the right thing by alerting the authorities. When the police arrived at the home of Kenneth Harden and Carrie Harden, they soon uncovered Carrie's body, partially burned and buried in a shallow grave behind their home. Investigators found gunshot wounds and signs of a poorly attempted cleanup, painting a picture far worse than Kenneth's claim of self-defense. In this heartbreaking story of Carrie Harden, who tragically lost her life to her husband, Kenneth Harden, a man who promised to love and protect her, little did she know she would be needing protection from him. Before we dive deeper into this story, we want to extend our deepest condolences to the family and friends of Carrie Harden. Also, we would like to take this crime case as a close reminder to everyone to be careful with who we marry. This case takes us to Fayette County, which is located in the north-central portion of the U.S. state of Georgia. Usually, Fayette County has one of the lowest crime rates in America, at a violent crime rate of 12, while the U.S. average is 22.7. This means that it falls below the national average. Although this location was supposed to be safe, that was not the case. You see, even with the low statistics, the year 2024 was a dangerous one for this small county, as something unusual began to happen. In the first 6 months of the year, there were 7 homicide cases, which were mostly domestic cases. Unfortunately, this trend would continue as Carrie Harden's case would add to the growing list of homicides in Fayette County. Carrie Harden was a 39-year-old mother of 2 from St. Louis. Everyone who knew Carrie had nice things to say about her. She had a warm, loving nature, which was probably well suited to her profession. Carrie was a registered nurse who was associated with the Nurses Earn It medical staffing group. Because of her compassion for patients, she embraced her role effortlessly, blending her professional and personal lives. She handled the tough hours of being a nurse gracefully, and her commitment to people's well-being was clear to anyone who worked alongside her. She spent her life being of service to her patients and family. Carrie was also a mother. She was a great person and an even greater mother to 2 amazing boys. As a mother, she poured a great deal of energy into raising her sons. Every day, she nurtured them with unconditional love, building memories she thought would last a lifetime. As a spiritual person, she also taught them about God and how they can form a close relationship with Him. Carrie was married to Kenneth Harden Jr., who was named after his father. According to her Facebook, she was married on the 13th of May, 2011. So this union was more than a decade long. She would often post appreciation messages on social media for her husband during Father's Day, calling him an amazing man and father. From the outside, it did seem like the perfect marriage, as they also posted videos of fun hangouts with their 2 sons. Their marriage appeared to be one rooted in faith and family values. Kenneth was also popularly known as Pastor Ken, and he was a man of great morals.
We're not interested in a building, your tithes and your offerings, but we are interested in you seeing Jesus in us. Seeing Him in such a way where it provokes you to change. Very recently on this corner, I preached from the subject, aren't you tired yet? You ought to be tired of seeing the community be in the way that it is. With a church on just about every corner, the homicide rate continues to rise, and still, for most of us, we do nothing. We have become immune to the killing, to the abuse, to our children who day by day lose their lives. But I declare unto you today that I believe that God has got something better.
Kenneth's ministry had humble beginnings in St. Louis. where he was known for preaching in some of the city's toughest neighborhoods. His message of hope resonated with many, and his reputation as a devoted man of God grew rapidly. It was Kenneth's devotion to his faith that drew Carrie to him, solidifying their bond. For over 14 years, the couple built a life together, their faith forming the foundation of their family. They seemed like the perfect couple. However, just like every normal relationship, they began to have disputes. The couple moved to Georgia, and that was where things took a terrible turn. What once seemed like a solid relationship started to unravel. The tragic events that unfolded on August 20th, 2024 would change the lives of 2 children and shock neighbors. Kenneth and Carrie had been in an argument in the morning. This argument would eventually last the entire day, and by the evening, they were drinking heavily. Because of the alcohol, the arguments between the couple had escalated. Fueled by booze and anger, Kenneth reached a breaking point, causing him to shoot Carrie in the heat of the moment. After realizing what he had done, he panicked and looked for a way to cover up his crime. His idea was to try to destroy the evidence by burning her body, so he got to work in the early hours of the next morning. While their 2 sons slept just inside the house, he cleaned the crime scene in a rush and dragged the body to the backyard. He went on to burn the body and buried his wife in a shallow grave. After disposing of Carrie's body, Kenneth went about his day as if nothing had happened. He dropped his sons off at school and arranged for his father to meet up with him. Understandably, he was confused and wanted to talk to someone about his crime, so he bought a plane ticket for his father to fly to Georgia and meet him in a bank. It wasn't until his father was in town that he revealed the crime, marking the beginning of his attempt to flee. Imagine the shock when an unsuspecting father arrives to visit his son, and after picking him up from the airport, they proceed to a bank to sign over control of his financial accounts. The shocked father asked what happened, and it was what Kenny told his father next that prompted his father to report it to law enforcement. Kenneth confessed to his father that he had killed his wife Carrie the night before in self-defense, so he was officially on the run. The father pretended to be sympathetic toward his son so that he could leave, but immediately after Kenneth Jr. left, Kenneth Sr. contacted the authorities. At 11 a.m., Kenneth's father made a disturbing call to the Fayette County Police.
He had told his father that he had shot his wife and pretty much that he was now going to be on the run. I got almost basically 2 calls at the same time that the cadaver dog located our victim, which was buried in a very shallow grave on the back part of the property.
When officers arrived at the Harden's home, they were met with a disturbing scene. The house, large and well-kept in a quiet neighborhood at Merlin Court, Northwest Fayette County, gave no outward indication of the horrors inside. Yet, inside, investigators immediately saw signs of a struggle and blood loss. They reportedly found evidence that supported Kenneth's father's claims. Despite Kenneth's attempts to clean up his mess, the efforts were incomplete.
Yeah, the victim, Carrie Harden, such a smart, hard worker. She had already saved for a car at the age of 14 and a half. She was brutally murdered after years of hiding from others the domestic violence that she suffered. Advocates for victims of domestic violence hope others will hear this story and they will reach out for help.
I never imagined that something like this would happen to Carrie. You know, it's like, no way.
Carrie was too big for this to happen to her.
Alicia Allen and Chastity Adams Miller are still in shock over their friend's brutal murder.
According to Fayette County Sheriff Barry Babb, the investigators immediately noted there had been somebody with some blood loss and that somebody had attempted to clean the crime scene. It didn't take long for cadaver dogs to locate Carrie's body. To make matters worse, parts of her body had been burned, adding another layer of brutality to the crime. With his wife's remains hidden under debris, it was clear that this was no ordinary domestic argument. The community was left shaken as more details surfaced, highlighting the deep tragedy that had unfolded behind closed doors. Investigators combed through the property, reviewing surveillance video and collecting evidence, and soon pieced together the events of the night. An argument that had escalated into a fight between the couple, leading to Kenneth killing Carrie, and him trying to hide the evidence of his crime.
With a church on just about every corner, the homicide rate continues to rise, and to rise. And still, for most of us, we do nothing. We have become immune to the killing, to the abuse, to our children who day by day lose their lives.
The police reached out to the school to ensure that the boys were safe. When asked when they last saw their mother, they said that they had not seen her throughout the morning and only remembered seeing her the previous day. What really surprised law enforcement was that the property had lots of cameras.
The thing that really struck me was the amount of surveillance equipment at this house. There were cameras all over the acreage that it had. It was several acres, all over the acreage, and there were cameras all throughout the house. I stood and looked at a multiplex screen of how many cameras that you could see and the angles and the positions. And anytime I see a camera set up like this, I'm also thinking covert. So I actually spoke to the captain investigator on the scene and said, assume you are recorded and your suspect is listening to you.
There were cameras all over the place, and the police concluded that Kenneth was watching them from a device. So he knew his house was not safe anymore. They expected that the investigation would take a long time, but the opposite happened.
If you have a child, 12 or older, and you'd like for them to get into the best university possible, I have something very important to tell you. You see, stop leaving your 6th to 12th graders' future to chance. Discover the 3 key factors that can increase your child's odds of getting into an Ivy League school by 500%, even if they aren't a straight A student. So, pause whatever you're doing and watch this video now. We're about to reveal an essential secret for parents of 6th to 12th graders that could make or break your child's future. Now, before we get into what we've discovered about getting into...
At the same time, another set of detectives were able to locate Harden's location using license plate recognition technology and assistance from the Louisiana State Patrol and the St. Tammany Parish Sheriff's Office. They tracked Kenneth to a motel in Covington, Louisiana, where a SWAT team arrested him without incident. At the time of his arrest, Kenneth was heavily armed, and investigators later learned that he had been contemplating suicide by cop. Fortunately, he chose to surrender peacefully. When the Fayette County investigators got the call that Kenneth was arrested, they traveled to Louisiana to question him further as they prepared to take him back to Georgia. According to the sheriff, Kenneth was fully cooperating.
He is completely cooperating to the point that I will tell you that Captain Lee, who has been an investigator at least 3 decades, said I've never had a homicide suspect.
He was being held at the St. Tammany Parish Correctional Center as a fugitive from justice before being moved to Georgia. Currently, there have not been any official charges for the crime, but he is in jail and will face justice soon. It is most likely that this case will be ruled as voluntary manslaughter, which is punishable by 1 to 20 years in prison in the state of Georgia. We all love our family members, cherish them, and need them. Each family is unique, but the bond between parents and children is universal, creating beautiful moments. Even with the strong bond he had with his son, it is a testament to the good in Kenneth Sr. that he reported this crime to the authorities immediately. The prison time can increase to life imprisonment depending on the severity of the crime. Because Kenneth Jr. tried to bury Carrie and also attempted to flee, he may be facing more severe charges. He is not a free man and would be punished by the law. The community in Fayette County was left reeling. The tragedy was a family that is now completely imploded. In this case, 2 parents have left the children, not just one. The couple's 2 children, who are in elementary and middle school, are currently under the care of family members. Fayette County Sheriff Barry Babb, who has worked in law enforcement for nearly 40 years, described the case as one of the most disturbing he's ever encountered. He expressed relief that the suspect was apprehended quickly, especially given the recent uptick in violence against law enforcement officers. Kenneth's decision to cooperate fully with investigators has provided valuable insight into his mindsets at the time of the crime, though it does little to ease the pain felt by Carrie's loved ones. Kenneth had been seen as a man of God, a devoted father, and a responsible neighbor. Many residents were in disbelief, unable to reconcile the man they knew with the gruesome details of Carrie's murder.
It's shocking as hell. Definitely seemed like something that would be on like on one of those shows. I didn't expect that.
Jabril Muhammad says he would have never expected his neighbor, 39-year-old Kenneth Harden Jr., to be accused of something like this.
He seemed like a cool dude. Like I said, he had a fireworks show down here for the kids before the 4th of July.
One neighbor, Jabril Muhammad, recalled Kenneth setting off fireworks for the children in the neighborhood just a few weeks before the 4th of July. It was difficult to imagine that someone who appeared so kind and devoted could be capable of such violence. And who can blame him? How does a man go from preaching the gospel to becoming a murderer? One can think to blame the alcohol, but isn't the fact that he had time to burn and bury her, clean the blood, fly his father, and transfer his financial assets to him mysterious enough to wonder if this truly was a crime of passion? This story, though left many unanswered questions, still gives us a lesson to learn on the effects of toxic relationships that can destroy lives in ways that go far beyond the individuals directly involved. In the tragic case of Kenneth and Carrie Harden, we see how abuse can escalate to the point of no return. Carrie was a loving wife and mother, yet behind closed doors, she faced the unimaginable, a partner whose anger, fueled by alcohol and stress, ended in her death. What's even more heartbreaking is the impact this murder will have on their 2 young sons, who now face life without either parent. Abuse doesn't just affect the person experiencing it. In this case, Carrie's family, friends, and especially her children are now left to deal with unimaginable grief and trauma. The boys, still so young, will carry the scars of this experience for the rest of their lives. Children who witness or are affected by domestic violence often struggle with trust, fear, and emotional distress in their future relationships. They may even feel guilty, wondering if they could have somehow prevented the tragedy. The good aspect of this case is that the 2 boys are safe and sound. Yes, they will now grow up without parents, but they were unharmed during the incident, and that counts for something. The family has created a GoFundMe account to help take care of Carrie's 2 boys. Out of a $300,000 goal, only around $1,700 has been raised. This money would be used to support the boys' education and ensure that they have a good quality of life. The community will continue to mourn the loss of a woman who dedicated her life to caring for others. Carrie Harden will live on through the countless lives she touched as a nurse, mother, and friend. Yet the tragedy of her death will also serve as a haunting reminder of how even the closest relationships can take a deadly turn if the warning signs are ignored. As the investigation continues, more questions than answers remain. What led Kenneth to commit such a horrific act? Was this a one-time lapse in judgment fueled by alcohol? Or were there deeper issues brewing in their marriage long before the move to Georgia? What do you think happened? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Thank you so much once again for watching another video by Wednesday Crime. If you like the way we bring you stories or you learned something new today, please like this video and consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't yet. As always, remember to leave your thoughts in the comments section below. Perhaps someone learns from your experience or advice. I will talk to you